Haley Crowley, creator of Whimsy and Wellness, and this is the Whimsy and Wellness podcast. Join us as we take our passions for natural health and wellness, motherhood, entrepreneurship, and personal growth a bit deeper than we've ever gone before. Here at Whimsy and Wellness, we're super passionate about empowerment and community, and I hope you walk away from each episode feeling a sense of both. Here's to a little more whimsy and wellness in your life. Now here's your host, Meg Ryan.
Hi friend, it's Meg. Before we dive into today's episode, I have to know, do you use essential oils? If so, do you have beautiful roller, spray, or dropper bottles to mix your oils in? No? Oh my goodness, then you need to check out our brand, Whimsy and Wellness. Our founder, Haley, created Whimsy and Wellness 5 years ago when she first got started with oils herself, but couldn't find any pretty roller bottles to mix them in. She has since grown her business from a little Etsy shop out of her garage to the leading essential oil accessory company, now producing everything from roller bottles with custom designs, gemstone roller tops, and glitter, to beautiful crystal slabs, DIY kits, and more. If you have essential oils but you don't yet have Whimsy and Wellness bottles and accessories to accompany them, then hop on over to our website at www.whimsyandwellness.com. And to make your Whimsy and Wellness order even more exciting, use code PODCAST for 10% off your first order. We can't wait to box up your goodies. Now, let's jump into this week's episode. Okay, I have a feeling that maybe you are familiar with Jamie Nato. If so, you're probably already smiling knowing the fun and silly antics Jamie brings wherever she goes. Seriously, whether it's a kitchen dance party on Facebook Live or Instagram storying her way through Target, she is so much fun. But if you don't know Jamie, I'm so excited for you to get to know her today on this episode. Jamie describes herself as annoyingly enthusiastic, which she's definitely enthusiastic, but I don't think she's annoying. She's into aggressive hospitality. She's a serial entrepreneur, a mother of 4, and married to her best friend, Mark. Today, Jamie is sitting down with me to talk all about parenting and the lessons she's learned all these years into being a mama herself. Just a reminder before we dive in, if you're new to our podcast or if you haven't done so yet, make sure to subscribe to the Whimsy Wellness podcast so you never miss an episode. We have amazing guests like Jamie on our show each week to discuss topics on natural health, motherhood, womanhood, personal growth, entrepreneurship, and more. And if you enjoy the show, please leave a review. Tell us your favorite episode, your favorite guest, or just what you're enjoying about the show. We love hearing from you, and each review truly means so much and makes a difference. All right, here is my conversation with the one and only Jamie Nato. Welcome to the Whimsy Wellness podcast, Jamie. I feel like a celebrity is in our midst.
A celebrity wearing pajama pants. So here I am. No, I'm not. I am the hottest mess.
No, we love you for it. We accept all hot messes here. So how are you doing? Any recent trips to Target lately?
You know, when people say, how are you doing? I'm like, today or like this year, like, what do I say? Purple, green. It's like, I don't even know how to answer questions anymore about how are you? I'm like, aren't we all just struggling a little bit? But, you know, I haven't been to Target. I've been to Target. I mean, I go to Target, but I feel like it's really hard for me to video as much as I used to because I can't try stuff on. Like until they open up those rooms, I'm like, I can't fully make fun of this outfit.
For listeners that are like, what are they talking about? Jamie Instagram stories through Target. Now you know. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I just make fun of stuff. I think that the junior section was just really, they did like some brand changing last year and it messed with me. You know, I was like, what? So I had to tell all the moms like, guys, it's half shirts. I don't even know how to put these shorts on. There's a painter suit if you need to mechanic
There's
work.
this gaping hole in the middle of the shirt.
Your swimsuits may be one small crocheted like pot holder.
Yes. So this all happens on Instagram and I love it. And I can't wait for these changing rooms to open back up so we can have this gripping content. Okay.
It's really changing the world. It's really changing the world.
It is. So can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your family for listeners who aren't familiar with you?
Yeah, I have 4 kiddos. I've been married for like 13 to 700 years. I really don't know. My husband corrects me every time. He's like 15. It's a big year. I don't know, this last year. I am a serial entrepreneur. So I kind of just, I started in the oily business, and then I was freed up to, we have a coffee shop, and I'm writing, and just lots of things that I would have never dreamed that we're doing with our life. But here we are, just kind of, I say serial entrepreneur as in like, I actually just like to do a bunch of things. And that's my like professional term to say like,
Yeah.
I actually don't have one thing that I like to do. I do many, many things halfway. And then I hire people to come in and fix what I started.
I love that so much. How old are your kids?
People are always so shocked to know that I have a 14-year-old, but 14, 12, 10, and 6. And they keep changing, as you know, every year. So every single year I have to redo my numbers. It's very tough.
Yes, especially at different times of year. It's like,
Yes. Yes. And you will hear my dog snoring in the background. And that's just a part of, if you're going to love me, you're going to love Greta snoring in the background. I try to be like snapping. I've thrown pillows before and putting him on video. Like, shut, Greta. No, she's
Greta.
not bothering me.
Jamie Nato featuring Greta.
Oh my gosh.
We'll put that in.
And you would love her. You would love her. She is the diva of the house.
I love it. Okay, so I was listening to a podcast today, actually, and the host asked the guest what their desired outcome was for the episode. And I'm like, what a great question. So I want to put you on the spot and ask you, what is your desired outcome for your time on the show today?
Thank you for experimenting on me and letting me go first here.
You and Greta.
Me and Greta, as Greta snores and thinks I'm boring. I hope people feel normal in kind of the things that are happening with parenting and feel just kind of loved and accepted in the way that we're all trying to figure it out as we go. And I hope that people think, oh, that's a good idea, or that's a really creative way to do that. I would never want someone to say that if they weren't doing it like me, that they're a failure or they're not doing it right. I think I have a lot to learn. And I just hope people understand and feel like, okay, we're all trying to figure this out. My parents didn't know what they were doing. I don't know what I'm doing, right? And we're all doing the best we can with the skills that we have. So
yeah, I love that. Okay, so I emailed Jamie, you guys, and said, like, we just wanted Jamie Nato to come on the show. So we're just like, will you come on? She said yes. And I just said, you can talk about whatever you want. And she said parenting. And specifically, she said gentle and compassionate parenting leads to gentle and compassionate adults and leaders. I'm like reading my email, just like so intrigued, like, yes, let's do that. So can you tell us, for people that are like, what is gentle parenting? This doesn't feel gentle to me. Can you explain what it is?
yeah, and like not all parenting can be gentle sometimes. Like you're not gentle when you yank your kid out of the street, like when they're about
yes,
to get run over. So keep it in context. I always have to put like these disclaimers on it because people are like, oh yeah, but what if there's a tornado and you're trying to get I'm like, okay, like let's not be weird. I think I like to be dealt with gently and compassionately. And so that's kind of been a concept that I've been really exploring in my parenting because I need it so much. And I figure if I'm really just kind of a larger child, like in a larger body, that my kids could benefit from that. So I've really been experimenting with maybe I don't need such a heavy hand on things that aren't that important and doing the work on myself. I do a lot of work on my own, childhood. We all come with traumas. Like we all come with things that shape us, and so I think as an adult, the best thing we can do is learn to undo some of that to become the parent that we want to be. And I don't think you can be a really compassionate parent if you're not compassionate with yourself. I don't think you can be a gentle parent if you're not gentle with yourself. And as you go through this journey of figuring out like, why do I act like that when this certain thing happens? Like, why do I keep doing that? Or I don't like that about myself when I respond in this way. And just giving myself a lot of compassion that, hey, maybe you don't have like that skill set yet. Maybe that's something you need some space and time to work on, as opposed to like badgering myself and shaming myself to change. Like you shouldn't have yelled like that. And because you did that, your kids are going to be screwed up for life. I just shame myself into like changing. And I was telling the girls, I went to Nashville last weekend and I was giving them a big permission slip of like, this year was really hard. And I want to give you guys a permission slip that your body carried you through this. You didn't know what was going to happen. Some of your businesses went the opposite way. Just no one knew what to do. I want to give you a permission slip here. And I think, we talked about we can't change if you're going to shame yourself. If you're going to start with change and be like, you should have done better this year. Why didn't your business grow this year? It's the same way with anything. You can't shame your way into true lasting change. It doesn't work, but you can start with love. Like having that compassion and that love for yourself can change you.
Yeah, so true. Isn't like shame corrodes the part of us that believes we can change, right? So like shaming yourself that you're yelling at your kids, you're just believing that you're a yeller and you can never be anything else, right? Like I love that you recommended like asking ourselves like, why do I get like that? What is that coming from? Like just getting curious is so helpful to just slow down.
I think about my parents' generation and they just didn't have that space. Like there was no space to be curious about, what do I believe? What do I think? Where did that come from? Like, why do we do this certain way? And just having that curiosity, I think, at least for the kind of space that we were in, I grew up like in an evangelical church, and it was basically like, you do it this way, and this is the way you do it, and you don't stray from it, and you also don't ask questions about it. And I'm thankful for my background, and I have a strong faith now, but I don't know, I think I'm getting more and more mature enough and giving myself a lot more grace to say like, if you have a question about that, like ask it. If you are curious about that, let's play it out. What does this look like? And like having that space to mess up and fail, I don't think that just comes easy to people.
Right. No, I agree. I think, do you know the book, The Whole Brain Child?
I've heard of it.
Yeah, I can't think of the author's name. It's like John Siegler or, oh, I'm so bad with names. But if you guys look up The Whole Brain Child, you'll find the author. But he said that like they did this huge study and how like the biggest indicator of your personal parenting is like how well you basically like accept and acknowledge your own childhood, which is like insane, right?
That's why I'm such an advocate for therapy, because if you ever go into therapy for anything, what they do is you talk about how you grew up. That's the very first thing that you go to kind of undo these things. And it's not a bash on our parents, even. It's not a bash on our church. It's just like, I had to have the freedom to go explore that. Where did that come from? Where did that idea come from? And do I like where this is going? If I'm so stuck on my life working this way and not being willing to change, like, do I like what it's doing to my family? Do I like what it's doing to my heart? How's it working out for me? Like asking yourself your own hard question, like, how's that going for you? To be
Yeah, no, that's really good. So you said your oldest is 14. So did you start out with this kind of parenting approach with him, or was there like a pivotal moment? How did that all happen?
I think I am a little bit more free-spirited by nature. And I do remember there was a phase in motherhood when I was more of an angrier parent. And I think you probably see that more when you have zero sleep. You're having a bunch of babies maybe, and you're breastfeeding and you're not sleeping in. Life is still happening. I mean, I went through kind of an angrier phase, but no one ever said like, where's that coming from? It was like, well, that's maybe like a sin and don't do that anymore. And you should stop doing that and stop immediately. And I just felt like, crap, I don't know how to do that. No one is giving me any skills. So I think through my earlier parenting, it was really confusing for me. I think I had read books, right? And it was like love and logic stuff where, they give you things to do. If your kid is screaming in the store, you gently, with no anger, pick them up. You go and you leave the store. But I'm like, I actually have to get milk. I can't leave the store. So what I would do is like carry suckers, like the vitamin C suckers in my purse, and just like, here, have another sucker. So my poor 14-year-old is, they're growing up with you, and I'm a different parent now, but it's a different season. And I have a lot more compassion for myself, and I have a lot more compassion for my teenager. Like, it's really nice to not be so angry all the time. And it's really nice that, because I worked through like stopping shaming myself, basically. When you shame yourself a lot, your first instinct is going to be to shame other people. Like when you are constantly hating on yourself and using your words to tear yourself down, that will be your first response, because you're training yourself every second of the day to do that. It's even more recent when I started being nice to myself about my body. I am a lot nicer to everyone else about their body. When I stop living in shame, I don't create that shame cycle in my own family. So I haven't done it well in some seasons, but I think in this season, I'm really thankful that I've done the work. And it took me 14 years, with Lane going through that. It took me a long time, but I much, much more prefer being gentle and compassionate with my children than doling out consequences, constantly yelling, screaming, being angry, shaming them for not being able to change overnight. It wasn't working for us.
That's awesome. That it's like, it's never too late. You can decide, like, this isn't feeling great. I don't like where this is going. Okay. I think a super common response sometimes, especially like with our parents' generation, right, is sometimes like, well, I was raised that way and I'm fine. And it's like, fine. Just because we're not doesn't mean we're not, just doesn't mean we're fine.
Fine.
We're like raging, right? It's like, so for like the kind of skeptics or whatever, what are like the benefits of, that might sound silly to some, but like, what are the benefits of like being gentle with our kids and gentle parenting and all of that?
Well, I think my faith informs a lot of how I parent. And I think as I'm walking through my faith and as I'm walking with areas in my life that I would like to change, that I don't enjoy about myself, when I go to God, and I don't know if this is your audience, but I just have to be honest with you, my faith really informs everything that I do. So when I go to God, like say I really messed up here, God, like help me. How do I like to be dealt with? And God is so tender and compassionate and gentle with me that it's changing me. So I don't think anyone's ever like, man, I was too compassionate there. Yeah, if I could turn back time, I would be less compassionate. No one says that. But we do regret, I wish I wasn't so angry. Gosh, if I could go back, I would not have screamed and yelled that. So you look at these characteristics, which there is no law against, right? Like there's the Bible verse that says like against these lovely things, like no one makes laws against being lovely and generous and like compassionate and empathetic. But we do have laws to protect us from anger and rage, right? I just think like if you did an honest self-assessment and thought, what do I really want to change? And when these cyclical things keep happening, I have these patterns. When I was listening to a podcast, and it was basically like, why do I get so upset when my child is crying? It's because I grew up, not me personally, but he was saying I grew up not being able to show my emotions. So I have a physical response to one of my children crying because I don't have the skills to deal with you, and I wasn't allowed to feel as a child. And so you truly have a physical response, like control this, hurry, something is crazy, we must control this. So I think it's just important to look at your reactions, like look at where it's cyclical. Like I have a problem with relating with your boys, or maybe you have a problem relating with your girls, and you need to question, why is that? We're not asking enough questions and digging deep enough. And so I continue to do that. It's every single day. I think, why do I have this block in this area? And how can I do my own work, right, to build that skill up so that the next time this comes around, I get to practice a new skill. And guess what? New skills are awkward. You don't crush it the first time you go out and like water ski. I mean, I have not even tried to water ski. So I watch people water ski and I'm like, that takes a lot.
Looks hard.
That looks really difficult. You look like you have to have a core, like an ab.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I would just say like, how's it working out for you? If you're skeptical about like, no, if I'm gentle, my kids will just walk all over me. And I don't know, when people are gentle and compassionate with me, my first response is not like, how can I take more advantage of them? I'm actually really endeared to them. I feel really seen and heard when people are compassionate with me and empathetic and don't just like snap all the answers and tell me how to fix it because we're bigger, right? So we have more power, right? We're the adult and they're the kids it's just a weird thing in our brain where we don't treat them like humans. And I think I would not want to be treated like that. Like really evaluating and my husband and I parent differently. He gets angry and he wants to yell and he does these like he goes into these like rage things, but we have like these code words where I have to be like, you can't do that here. Like you need to go evaluate why that makes you so angry. So, even in that we have a different style of parenting, but we have checks and balances. So if I'm being too like lighthearted about something or giving too much freedom, my husband will be like, do you think that's a good idea for a 14-year-old boy to have no curfew at all? I'm like, well, until he ruins it, I'm not.
Yes, exactly. I remember hearing something along the lines of like, do you want your kid to do something, whatever it might be, because they're afraid of you or because like they actually understand why they have to do it? And that was very eye-opening to me. Like I think again, like you said, if your kid's in the street, like you can't be like, "Oh, Billy, sweetie, please come here." Like sometimes we got to rip them out of the street. But like they're 90% of the other time, like it's sure sometimes it's just easier to like rage, but you don't want them to like not do something or do something because they're afraid, because it's really not teaching like a lesson at all, right? Like I mean, I'm sure if we asked the kid afterwards like, do you know why we can't do that, or it's like no.
Yeah, I mean, fear just overrides like a lot of logic. So when you create a fear-based kind of like your kids are afraid that you're going to yell or your kids are afraid of your emotions, like your kids are afraid that you are going to act out in some way, that's just creating trauma. I mean, it's just creating trauma. It's creating little worshipers of you. Like basically, I am just trying to manage my behavior so that mom and dad act a certain way. It's just so unhealthy. It's so unhealthy. There is no lesson there. It's not logical. And particularly if you're an angry parent, they don't know what's going to set you off. And that's very confusing for a child. So I think a lot of things could probably be fixed more instead of just screaming and yelling. Like, I've just been like, do you need a hug? Which is so awkward for me because I'm not a hugger. Anyone who knows me knows that I'm like, how do you hug? Do you put your hands around? Or it's like it's like getting a hug from a giraffe. Like I'm literally like, is this tapping good?
Am I doing it right?
Do you want me to tap your head or your heart? Like it's so bad.
Are we done?
It's so bad. But like I said, it's a skill that I'm willing to try. And honestly, like if they're like, no, what are you doing? Who cares? It's like, oh no, you tried to hug me. You're not going to feel bad about trying to give your kid a hug. But I've noticed that it just kind of deflates the tantrum. It deflates the situation. Even with my older child, I can be like, hey, your reaction does not match the task. Like I just asked you to clean your room. Like what's going on? And just having that conversation. Toddlers are harder, right? You can't like have this logical conversation maybe with a toddler, but toddlers need physical touch. You can hug a toddler. You can hold a toddler. So there's just a lot of things that as we've gone through the ages, I've noticed I'm really not proud of myself when I'm super angry and ragey. I am proud of myself when I say, hey, I don't trust my emotions right now. And it has nothing to do with you. I had a terrible thing happen this morning. This is not your fault, but I need about 5 minutes to think about like the consequence we'll have for this. And we'll get back together in about 5 or 10 minutes. Okay. But we both need to go to our rooms. And like, for me, I need to go pray, and you need to go pray and ask God to change your heart, because that's your only hope, right? Like there's just different skills that I have now, and just different things that I say now that are new for me. But I'm learning. I've learned, the best thing you can do as a parent is say you're sorry. I think it's like the best skill you can have is show your kids that you're sorry. It creates other humans who don't always have to be right. And like if you noticed in this past like election and this past tumultuous situation, we have a lot of people with no skills. Like we have a lot of people with no empathy skills. We have a lot of people with no apologizing skills. We have a lot of people that need to be right, like as an identity, right? And so I think it's just a lost skill, and I'm willing to do the work with my kids now to teach them that this life is not about being right. I mean, it's not.
I'm going to call myself out here and admit that I'm horrible at remembering to take my vitamins and supplements. I have all the right intentions and then I forget to take them. Anyone else? Thankfully though, I recently discovered a daily all-in-one superfood powder called Athletic Greens. Just 1 scoop of Athletic Greens into your water bottle, or my personal favorite way, into your smoothie, contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced ingredients, including a multivitamin, multi-mineral, probiotic, green superfood blend, and more. Everything I need in one easy scoop. Okay, now I know what you're thinking, but Meg, how does it taste? Friend, I am picky with taste and texture, so trust me when I say that Athletic Greens is so yummy. It's also lifestyle friendly, so whether you eat keto, paleo, vegan, dairy-free, or gluten-free, you can enjoy it too. Product sourcing and clean plant-based ingredients are incredibly important to Haley and I, and that's why we love Athletic Greens. They invest in the most absorbable and natural source of each ingredient and go above and beyond in third-party testing to ensure their customers continue to receive the highest quality possible. Are you ready for the best part? Athletic Greens is exclusively offering our Whimsy Wellness podcast listeners a free 1-year supply of vitamin D along with 5 free travel packs with your first purchase when you shop with our link, athleticgreens.com/whimsy. Nearly half of the US population are vitamin D deficient, and even if you're not, a ton of health experts are currently noting the importance of vitamin D and its direct impact on supporting the immune system. Haley and I are so excited for you to join us in making a super easy and delicious daily commitment to your health with Athletic Greens. Grab yours and your free vitamin D and 5 travel packs at athleticgreens.com/whimsy.
I want to go back to specifically apologizing in a second because I love that. But also back to just like remembering that this child is going to be an adult. I think also like thinking, is this consequence or this reaction like going to serve them in life? Like your apology will, because, oh, my mom always apologized, so what's the big deal? Versus like, I literally don't know how to apologize. Nobody around me apologized. Or likewise with taking a break, right? Like how much conflict and bad choice words or actions could we avoid if we just took 5, even as grown adults?
Or like, being slow to speak is just like a really, really tough thing to learn. But once you get the skill, it comes so easy, right? So now when someone is saying something crazy to me, like truly in my head, I'm like, you are being crazy. I don't have to say you're being crazy. I know that that's what's happening. I know that it's not about me. Again, that person is having a physiological response to something very undealt with childhood trauma, probably. And it's not about me. So when I know that, I don't have to comment on everything on social media. I don't have to say everything to everyone. There are times that I think about what I'm going to say and then I go say it. It's like really logical things that we lost along the way. I think this past year, and really with the advent of like all this social media and all this information firing off behind a screen, I think it's not taught us compassion. So I'm having to relearn it. I think after this year, I'm taking big breaks and just giving myself a lot of permission to say like, hey, here are the things I didn't like about the actions that I did this last year. I cringe at some of the things that I said. And if I would have been slower to speak, no one's like, I wish I was quicker to speak on that. I wish I was so much meaner in that comment. You don't wish that. So I don't know. It's like a lot of reevaluating and thinking about my parenting. The way that I parent is, it's not about me. It's about this continual relationship that I want to have with my kids and my grandkids as we go. And it's these skills I want them to have, that when my grandkids have kids, they'll say like, that was from Grandma Jamie. She, this is what she taught. Grandma Jamie taught me this. And I think those things are important. I think that's a legacy I would love to leave behind, more than money or inheritance, or, just an inheritance of like grace and mercy and compassion. And I think we get to do that in our homes. You are shaping these little souls. I wish we would take it more seriously and do the work on ourselves, because you are impacting generations with your words and how you decide to, explode on someone or be thoughtful and compassionate.
Yeah, so true. My son's only one, but we forget like, oh, this, God willing, this child is going to grow up to be an adult, right? Like I still remember he was like learning to crawl and I made some comment like, he looks like a little human. And it's like, yeah, he is a human. I think we like forget that like we're raising little adults, like soon to be adults. And so that is so precious. And not only an adult, but an adult that's going to parent. And it's like, that's such a huge responsibility, but like an honorable one. So huge. And I think too, something I've been learning is like our expectations sometimes are just not aligned with like what they can actually do. Right. Like,
I'm just laughing. My teenager, I'm like, so that was a good idea in your head and you did it. Okay. It's exciting that your brain doesn't work. It doesn't work.
yeah. Do you know that account Simply on Purpose? She's like a great gentle parenting. Her name's Ralphie. I love that name so much. But she has great stories and she always says like if you're frustrated with your kid, it is 99% of the time like rooted from your skewed expectation of something that like they actually can't do. I remember Acre being like 6 months old and he's like screaming in the middle of the night and I'm just so over it and I'm like, I need you to stop. It's like, can he do that? Like, does he know what you're asking?
I don't want people hearing this and saying like, oh man, I've messed this up. I still stand behind the greatest thing you can do is just keep apologizing. Keep apologizing. Keep letting your children know how you didn't handle that correctly. And there's so many opportunities to do that as they age. But who has the hardest time with that is my oldest, because I did not have that skill. So, they reflect back to you those seasons that you're in, and Lane can be really intense. And because I was in an intense season, my marriage was at one point falling apart. There was like trauma there. I just think like they take that on with you. So they kind of reflect, Lane is not as empathetic. And so someone will get hurt and he'll be like, you're fine. I have to do the work of undoing, because I did that to him. Like, it's not even his fault that he's saying that. It's just, I taught him to say that. So I'm undoing that with him. And we have a lot of conversations about like, hey, what do you think would have been a more empathetic response? They're bleeding. So it does appear to be hurting. Like, use logic here. And I'm doing that. But again, Lane has a lot of incredible skills that he had to learn with having a special needs sister. He is the most inclusive. He sees who's doesn't fit in, and he is like, hey man, you want to jump into this game? He's so good with all different ages. Like, so they all have these skills, right? But they learn them from somewhere. I can pick out the amazing ones that he has, and I can pick out the ones where they really reflect me at that time of parenting. You have a child who is, they like, do this annoying thing. I think, again, you need to look back at yourself and see like, okay, where did they learn that? And is it something that I can help them undo by acknowledging like I'll be like, Lane, I parented you to get up and shake it off and not to feel, because it was much more convenient for me. And I had another baby. I just needed you to like pick up and carry on. That was unfair. Really, I mean, that's radical self-awareness. And I think even saying that is radical honesty. But I'm just like, I don't think there's any other way to live. And I don't want to be a part of relationships where there's not radical self-awareness, there's not radical honesty, not radical vulnerability. I think I would love to create little humans who know how to do that as they get older, and just be willing to know that I'm going to apologize a lot to them when they get older. But it's like an identity game. You can't get all your identity from your children and from mothering and doing everything perfect. And you can't get all your identity from your marriage. Like, I parent out of my identity in Christ. So that's unmovable. Like, I know that despite my performance and despite my behavior, I'm still loved and cherished. And so like, I try to parent my kids that way, because the truth is I really do. Like, despite their behavior, like I would move mountains for them. Right. Like, despite them being totally rude to me, then they forget their backpack or their lunch. And what am I doing? I'm like, I'm not going to punish them and be like, well, you don't get a lunch. Like, I'm running it up there. So I don't know. I think if you look at it just really humanely and really compassionately, you can create these empathetic humans. And I think empathy is going to change the world. And I think generosity is going to change the world. And I think these are the good things, that there's no law against, like, let's create these environments in our home where these characteristics are cherished and worked towards,
Right. And I think too, just like you said, with sitting down with Lane and saying, let's think of a more empathetic response. I think like with that, you're not only teaching him like that lesson right there in the moment, but also like the amazing tool. He's watching his mom like forgive herself and admit that maybe wasn't the best way to do things back then. And so then like hopefully when he's a dad, he will have no issue doing the same thing that you're doing in that moment. Whereas like if he never sees that, it'll be so hard, right? Like just like what we were talking about with generations, like that is so powerful, I think, and just like Grandma Jamie, like to think if he could be like, well, my mom always did that. So there's like no shame in it because it's just always what my mom did.
Right. Like, think about the normal things in your household growing up. Like, I grew up with hospitality all the time. My parents didn't have a lot of money, but they opened their doors and we always had people over for dinner. We always had huge neighborhood parties. The door was always open. And so I just grew up thinking that that was normal. So when my neighbors come over at my house, is a literal like tornadic event. Like, people are like, you've been burglarized. I'm like, no, man, those are just me. We did a little laundry, but then I forgot to finish it. So hot lava your way into the bathroom. And you can see it on their faces. Like, how are you even okay with us coming in here and seeing your mess? It's normal to me. And so creating that environment where like compassion is just so normal to me, questions and curiosity is just so normal for me. And I think we get afraid of like, I don't know, if I change, that's scary. If I put myself out there and say that I might have been wrong, like, ooh, no, everything has been wrong and I'm the worst. And I think, well, what if you created an environment where like change was normal and changing your opinions on stuff was really good? And it was really good to be curious about what I believe. Even in the faith-based scene, and people think if you ask questions there, if you ask questions to God, right? Oh no. But it's like when your kids come to you and ask a question, I am so not offended. Like, I'm like, what do you want to know? Let's talk about it. I'm glad they're coming to me. Like, okay, let's hash it out. And I just think creating an environment where like questions are okay. Being curious about this is okay. Our normal is like, I don't have a stringent schedule. I want them to be bored. so that they get like really resourceful. I grew up that way. I'm extremely resourceful now. If you want me to find money, I will go find it. Like I was selling rocks tomorrow, like from your yard back Tuesday, because I curated them, guys. No, but just creating these environments. And it is, some of it is intentional. Some of it's like that latent, like this is how I was in my childhood. But I keep the good things. I keep the good things that I loved from my childhood. And then I just say, these other things aren't working for me. And that's it. There's no shame in that. I give myself a lot of freedom to change. And I hope that my kids see their mom changing. And I will tell Lane all the time, like he's older, so we can have these conversations, but he'll pick a controversial topic because he watches the news now. We're like, well, what do you think about that? Are we Republican or are we Democrat? And I'm like, what are you? Are you Republican or are you a Democrat? He doesn't even know what it means, right? But they want to take on your cause because it's mom and dad. I don't play that game. I'm like, you got to figure that out, dude. Like, here's what this side is thinking on this. Here's this side's thinking on this. And he's like, I can kind of see both views. Okay. This is what we want. It's just creating that environment, asking a lot of questions, letting them ask questions and not giving them your opinions, like letting them figure that out for themselves and letting them ask questions about it. So that part, I'm like proud of how we are parenting our teenager. I'm proud of the freedom in our home. I'm proud of the conversations that we have. I talk to my teenager about, listen, here's what's coming for you. You're going to go to parties and they will now have alcohol at them probably. We need to think about like, how are you going to respond to that? What are your thoughts on alcohol? When do you think you're going to start experimenting with that? Like, are you curious about that? You need to remember how when you were a teenager, you were curious about that. You did have crushes on people. You were totally trying to make out with everyone. Your kid probably like is curious about that too. Like, just be honest. Like, when I was in high school and I started going to these parties, they always had alcohol at it. And I'm just going to name that. And I tell my story, like, I didn't drink, but maybe, dad has a different story, which is for him to share, and just sharing stories of like, this is how that didn't work out for me. This is how that did work out for me. We have those conversations surrounding like sex. We have them surrounding alcohol, anything that teenagers could be into. We're talking about it. And I zip tie the liquor cabinet up. Like, I still do some safety net here, guys. Like, I still am like a responsible parent, but parenting is a conversation.
And I think too, like with so many topics, we think like, if we don't talk about it, it won't be a thought. It won't be a curiosity. And it's like, we've proven how many times that it's like actually the opposite, right? Even with like mental health, people think like, okay, I won't talk about it and then it'll go away or something, and it's like, we can talk about it. We can ask the questions.
Yeah. I mean, same in your marriage. Like, if you're not talking about stuff inside of your marriage, like, and being like brutally honest about anything, it's not like you just parent one way and you compartmentalize it here, and then you're married over here and you just do things a different way in your marriage, and then you are a teacher over here and you do things. When you really change something about yourself, it kind of overflows into all areas. And I mean, I think we have like radical honesty in our marriage. We try to keep that communication open, and I think it's when you build up that skill, and sometimes you just need to get brave in it, right? So like, maybe you start in your marriage because I need to learn this skill in our marriage, and then I'll go and to the with my kids. But I think like, take baby steps. Like, maybe something's been bothering you and you've wanted to talk about in your marriage, like, just bring it up when it's not, a fight. Like, instead of fighting about it, find a time where you can say, hey, this is an issue I've been seeing, kind of a cyclical thing, and I wanted to know if we could talk about it. Or, hey, I was wondering about this. I mean, that's all good stuff. And I think it's a skill again. And then you can come into like the parenting arena with this new skill that you have of communicating. You can take it to other relationships. It's a really free way to live.
Yes. So with apologizing, I think it's easy to like sometimes just talk about how like in a perfect world apologizing would be great, but like sometimes it, especially if it wasn't modeled for us, it feels like you're like, like undressing in front of a room, right? You're just like, this feels so embarrassing, uncomfortable. I feel like I'm telling you. I think oftentimes, like, we'll put our identity in what we've done wrong, right? And like, so it's like the shame thing. So I just want to hold space for that because it is hard for sure. And how do we begin that? So, like, maybe someone's listening and they're like, okay, I hear you. Like, I want to start apologizing to my kids. How do we start?
Yeah, you need to know it's going to be really awkward and difficult. But say you yell at your 3-year-old. They did not pick up their toys. You told them to pick up their toys. They didn't. So now you're coming into the room because you're having guests over and they didn't do it. And now you're going to scream at them. So you yell, I told you to pick up your toys. Immediately when I do act in anger or when I do something wrong, and right? Immediately you feel bad. Okay. So instead of living in that shame and that feeling bad all day long, or tucking it away into corners of your like cortisol and your heart and your blood pressure, just stopping in that moment and looking them in the eye and saying, Mommy should not have raised her voice like that. I am so sorry. I still expect you to pick up these toys. We'll do it together. It's taking that moment. It's the same thing as they age. You have to look them in the eye and say, I should not have rushed you out the door like that. It was my fault that I slept in, actually. That was on Mom. And I was rushing you. And then we got into that scream fight, and Mommy should not have been screaming. Like, that was not helpful this morning. I'm so sorry. Sometimes it takes me all day. Like, I pick them up from school or they come home from school and I say, hey, Bird, I was terrible this morning. I was just terrible this morning. And I shouldn't have done that. I should not have grabbed your arm and yanked you out the door to get into the car. It was rude. And they are so quick to forgive. But it's just the act of them. Like, my kids say, I forgive you. We have like a thing that we say, like, I'm sorry. And then you say, I forgive you. And that's a skill you teach them. But like a rote skill, kind of like memorizing something. And then later you use the skill, but you memorize it over here. And then when, you memorize math in addition over here so that when you're at the store, you can add really quickly and under stress, even though I can't do that. But you have these skills in your back pocket for when it's time. And like, I need the skills just as much as they do. So it's not, listen, how to apologize. Everybody knows how to apologize. It's more like humbling yourself and feeling like you're kind of going against like the ocean to look them in the eye and say that I'm sorry. I will say it's just so much easier. It is so much easier now. It's like I don't skip a beat anymore. It's like the quickest thing. And that's how you want it. You want no one keeping this cycle of anger and bitterness alive, right? So if I just nip it in the bud right now, we got it. And my husband does that with me. He kind of like actually led in that way of helping me know that, like, he says he's sorry a lot. And I had a hard time saying I was sorry. Like, truly, I was like, I'm like, how do I say this? And so I just, it's like you take a cue from from someone who's doing it well in your house, and you just lead by doing. Eventually your kids will catch on.
Yes. I was listening to a podcast with a childhood psychologist, and she was saying that, like, I think it's under 5 especially, kids are just super super like egocentric, like everything's about me, everything's for me. But they also think, like, when there's conflict and rage and stuff, that it's like because of me and my fault. Because I think sometimes we think, like, well, they're 2, why do I have to apologize? But like, they literally think even you fighting with your husband or whatever, like, that must be my fault, because their brain is just not the same as ours when it's that young. And it's just so egocentric that it's like, my fault, me, 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 me. And so even just saying, like, I'm sorry you had to hear that between me and grandma or whatever, that like has nothing to do with you, or, is like so huge.
And listen, parenting is such a nuanced thing. I would just encourage you to take the tiniest baby steps towards change. And I think your best baby step will be looking at your own patterns and the things that you don't like about your parenting and digging deeper in that and saying, like, where did this come from? Where do I need some healing here? And out of that, it will change your parenting. Therapy is helpful in there. And then, there's a ton of parenting podcasts, but I need to recommend that one. I think we were probably talking about the same one. It's called The Place We Find Ourselves by Adam Young and Jay Stringer. He has a podcast on, I'll send it to you, about parenting and kind of where your parenting comes from. Incredible work on change. And I think we're capable of it. I don't think we have to live miserably as parents and wonder why we keep doing the same things over and over again.
Agreed. Yeah. And ask yourself what you didn't like, but then also like forgive yourself for those things. And like, what do I want it to look like going forward? We can't be like held captive to like who we once were, right?
Just saying like, hey, you were doing the best that you could. You don't have a lot of skills in that area. And like, we're going to work on that. Like, feel free to like not live in shame about that. We are going to work on this. We are going to move past this. I say that same phrase to my kids. Like when they feel down about something, I'm not good at math. I'm not good at whatever. I'm like, hey, that's a skill that we're going to work on. That's it. Don't be so hard on yourself. We'll do it together. We're going to work through this together. We're going to figure it out. Just a hopeful message instead of like, you should have done better on that test or whatever. You didn't study hard enough.
Okay. So obviously your kids are still kids, but we talked about the generational thing, but specifically like when your kids are grown and they're talking to their kids or maybe friends and they're like, oh, my mom, Jamie, like, how do you like hope and pray that they describe your parenting?
The main thing I hope that my kids say is like, my mom just gave us a lot of space and a lot of freedom to figure out who we were. And I'd love for my kids to think that I cared enough to let them do that on their own and to not mold them into who I would like them to be or who I think they should be. That I really just trusted God that He has them. And my job is to like facilitate their growth and their freedom and their and love in this environment. Like my job is just to facilitate taking care of them and loving them. So I don't know. I hope that they feel like my mom was a total weirdo. She just did a lot of crazy things. She painted her walls pink. That's what I'm trying to get my husband to do right now. But just like it was a free and creative time in my life. That's what I hope they say. Like I never felt so safe and so free than when I was, in my mom's house.
I love that. That's beautiful. We should all ask ourselves that, right? As moms, like, what do we hope our kids say about us? And what do we hope they don't say?
I know. My kids are going to say a lot of crazy stuff, but it's like, I hope I can be like, that was true, dude. That was such an intense time. Like, I'm so sorry. That was all my issues. I hope it's like, I hope that's the conversation I have with my kids, not like, well, my parents did this and I turned out just fine.
Isn't it freeing too to know that like no mom or dad could ever get it all right? It's like kind of freeing in a way to know like there is no like perfect path. So like you're fine. Right? That's just like, okay.
Right. And then they're going to be parents one day too and be like, oh, okay. Yeah,
Yes.
this was crazy. That was crazy. That's why they acted like that. This is really hard and you don't sleep. And we were also little a-holes.
Yes.
But I don't know if you say that on your podcast.
It's okay. It's accepted. Okay. Are you ready for rapid fire?
Okay, let's do it.
Okay. What's something people get wrong about you?
I think sometimes because I am like I'm a jokester. I like humor and like funniness that like I don't know, I'm not good at business or I'm not good at serious stuff, but I live up in my head a lot of the day and I like some strategy. I do like some serious thoughts. I live in my head a lot of the time on logic. I think people think like, oh, it's just fun. She's crazy and she just does these crazy things. But most of the time I live in my head a lot as a 7 Enneagram.
Yeah, I love that. That's a good one. I remember being in some Facebook group where you were teaching business stuff and you like got on your dancing and then all of a sudden you just drop like strategy fire. It's like, okay. So yeah, it's both. What's a failure that turned out to be a really big blessing in disguise?
mean, everybody knows about my marriage. We were going to get a divorce. So I think that was my biggest surprise. I thought this is going to be the end of me because I had a lot of identity wrapped up in like my marriage being great and being an awesome Christian lady. And then when you're not awesome and your marriage is falling apart and you look like an idiot, but God used that to transform. Like I got to talk about that a lot and had a huge growth in even like my platform and my influence because I decided to talk about like this really hard thing that ended up being like the best thing for our marriage. Like we're way closer than before. So
yes. And like, I don't know, just thinking of how many couples it's helped, both the ones that have messaged you and even that like have said nothing. It's just like, wow, what an impact. Okay. Who's your entrepreneurial girl crush?
Entrepreneurial girl crush.
That's like a mouthful. Every time I ask that question, I'm like, don't say it wrong. Entrepreneurial.
I know. Did you ever watch this? This is so old, but like Joy. Did you ever watch the movie Joy?
No.
You gotta go watch it. It's like the lady who invented huggable hangers. And she went on QVC. Like it was this whole thing. Well, the movie is like.
Oh, wait. Is it who's the star? The Hunger Games girl?
Yes.
Yes, I did see this. Okay.
Okay. I literally wanted to like go door to door and sell stuff after that movie. And my husband was like, no, we're leaving the theater. Like you're locked in there. So I think she's amazing. I think she pioneered quite a bit.
Such a good one. Okay. Since we're whimsy and wellness, what's your current favorite DIY roller blend?
I love orange plus lavender. It's so simple, but I do feel like it is a tantrum tamer. Like I don't even pretend like I don't know, 5 drops and 5 drops. I don't know. I don't do recipes, but it's always like a splish and a splash.
Yes.
But it smells good. Like no one hates it. Like no one's going to be like, what are you doing? And really it's because you are just having a huge tantrum. Like when we have play dates, I always do orange and lavender because it's so chill.
Ooh.
You can't be done smelling it.
Yes. That's amazing. I do love me some orange and lavender. You're right. It sounds so simple. You don't think it would smell as good as it does. And then you're like.
People overlook it. They want like Skittles blend, which I do love, geranium and like citrus fresh and lime and lemon. It does smell like Skittles, but like, yeah, that smells great. I need you to just solve a problem right now, which is my kids are screaming. So
yeah. And like sometimes you don't have time for like 800 bottles and you're like,
no,
it's a rock.
keep it simple.
Yeah. Okay. Where can people find you and follow along with you and all of that good stuff?
Jamie Nato on Instagram. There's no E in my name, so that would be helpful. And jamiinato.com. I keep like a marriage tab, whatever you like want to learn about there. I only have like 4 things that I really talk about, but if you're looking for like craziness, go to my Instagram. I'm like out of control in stories. But if you're looking for like just a static good post about like, okay, I want to hear all your podcasts on marriage, like that kind of keeps me looking professional. And then Instagram, like, why am I here? Like, I hope you don't hate me. Yes. Let's go shopping. Yeah. So.
Love it. And you're writing a book, right?
Yeah, I'm perpetually writing a book, but this book, I really am ready. I'm ready to write it and no one can stop me. I'm writing.
Yes.
It's going to happen.
Love it. We're excited. Well, thank you so much. You're just a light with your humor and wisdom all mixed together. It's like, this was just a treat. So I so appreciate it. Thank you.
I appreciate it.
I'm so grateful for these conversations we get to have on the Whimsy and Wellness podcast. Make sure to tune in every Tuesday as Meg interviews more amazing guests and sometimes just her and I chat. Also, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss an episode. Your support and opinion of our show means the world to us. So if you could take just 2 minutes to leave a review on Apple Podcasts, we'd be so grateful. You can follow along with us on social media at Whimsy and Wellness Podcast and at Whimsy and Wellness for behind the scenes, inspiration, and so many essential oil recipes and tips. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.